Tetris, a little game, puzzle game, made by a developer called Stone, which I believe is one person, and I believe is a Japanese person. But that doesn't matter, because we don't take into account who did it, how many people did it, if their conditions were optimal or suboptimal, if the price of the game was expensive or it was free. That's nothing to do with the review. I just comment on what I have in front of me and outside of context, just the game. Small little game, as I was saying, and I'll start as usual with what I was expecting from the game before I started playing, what I knew, and then what I actually got once I play. Then I'll go through the positives and negatives, which in this case I have only one positive, only one negative. It's not a big game, so it doesn't give you much. It's not much to criticize. Very simple, kind of like in the line of 20 small mazes, similar. And then I'll mention a couple of things, just a mention. Things that I wonder, that I question myself about the game, that it would be awesome to have answer to these questions. And I'll make my final comments about my opinion about the game, and I'll give a final score, which I always explain. And before I start, I want to make sure I explain something about the game. The game is not one game, it's two games. So I learned about this Tetris, the Puzzle House, which was released this month, at the beginning of this month, March 2024. And once I went to buy it on Steam, have a look and see if this is something that interests me or is something interesting for the channel. And then I learned that this is the second installment on this franchise or a saga. It's like the second game of this developer. Maybe it has done more games, but with the title Tetris, this is the second. And then I had a look at the first one. And the first one is available for free through web browser, or you can download an executable. So we played both. My intention was to play Tetris the Puzzle House, which is the second game. Not the second part, because the second doesn't follow the first one. They are same game, same style, similar, almost identical, but they are different games. So my intention was to play the second one only. But as it is a short game, it wouldn't have been enough for one stream. So why not play also the first one, which is accessible for free? And then we played both on the same day. So at the end, I will give two different scores. As I said, they are super similar. It's like identical. There are minor differences between first game and second game. So what I'm about to say, it applies to both. But there's a slight difference, and then the feeling that I had when I finished playing had similar but different impressions about the game. So all my comments are equal for both games, and if I have to make a note, I will say it. But at the end, there will be two scores, which is unusual. This has never happened in a review, because I'm not reviewing one game, I'm reviewing two games. So two different scores for each one. I'll start with my expectations. So I was expecting, as I said, a game similar to 20 Small Mazes, which is a very small game by a solo indie developer, which I believe is the case, and puzzle game with a gimmick mechanic, I might say, like something interesting and exploited not to the maximum, because as a small game, I wasn't expecting the, let's call it gimmick, or the mechanic of the game to be exploited to the maximum. It's a good idea, cool idea, something to experiment with. That's more like what I was expecting. Like kind of a concept game or something to experiment with. And what I got was exactly or very similar to what I was expecting. What I got was a very little and simple game that it's so simple that I can consider it a minimalistic game. With 20 Small Mazes, we were talking about no design. I believe, in my opinion, this game belongs to the minimal design game. Because the only thing you can do and you have to do in this game is move objects around. But move them in the simplest of ways. You move them up and down and left to right. You don't rotate them. I don't think at any point you have to rotate any object or combine something with something. You have to combine, as if you want to see it this way, when you put one thing overlapping the other. You might want to see it that way, like stacking, but not like they change the way they function, the way they work. They are just like images, and you overlap one image with another image. And you would say, or you might think, this is so simple mechanic that it's not going to get you very far. But that's the greatness of this game. It's able to make a game from start to end and doing all the time the same, which is move objects. It manages to be, first, is interesting. It kept my interest throughout all of the game. And the second one is the variety of the puzzles, because it's not doing the same again and again. It kept my interest because the puzzles, or each of the situations with the objects, they are different. So it's kind of magical, like only by moving objects around, the amount of situations that you are in within this game and you have to solve puzzles, which I'll talk about next, it's an achievement for this game, for an indie game. So in the end, I liked this game. It didn't start well because I felt it a bit obtuse, but once, if you see my playthrough, at least for the first game, you'll see that I went through all of the puzzles and I think I didn't solve any. But on the second review, when I checked them for the second time, I started making connections. So first I was like locating the dots, and then on the second one I was connecting the dots, some dots, because some puzzles were more obtuse than others, more obscure. I wasn't understanding what the game wanted from me, what the game wanted me to do, but little by little, by doing one puzzle and another puzzle and a different puzzle and something different, and next one is different, but they all belong to the same family. Little by little, I was starting to recognize patterns and shapes, and kind of this relates to the final score. So in the end, the game was presented to me like a new language that I didn't know how to manage, how to speak, how to talk, how to communicate. But the game, little by little, was communicating with me, and I was understanding what the game wanted and expected from me. And in the end, I was able to play easily, like speak this game language. These are, in general, my opinion. On the good side, it's an achievement that it does a lot with very little, because it's a minimalistic game and it's very entertaining, and actually it applies to both. Everything applies to both games, first one and second one. But on the other side, it's a little bit hard to get into because you don't know what to do, you don't understand. The first game and the second one, they both have, the first puzzle is the tutorial, when you have to move one object, move it out of the way. You don't have to combine it, connect it, you don't have to solve anything. Just move the object from position A to B. B could be any position. And then the game tells you, now that you have a combination, by moving this object, you got a combination. Input the combination and press the 3, like to confirm. That's all the tutorial. From there, you are on your own. And that's the second part of the game. The first one is move objects, and once you have moved them around, you have to end up with a sequence of letters that you have to input on the right side of the screen. And that's all this game has. Move objects and input a combination. So very simple, and to me this is perfect example of a minimalistic game. Good, it does a lot with very little, but it's a bit obscure and obtuse at the beginning. Once you get things in motion, you start getting it and start communicating with the game. But I have to summarize that into positives and negatives. And my first positive, I have one small positive, one small negative. Out of the aspects of the game, my favorite one, because it's, as I said, minimalistic game, is that the game has no color. In that sense and in that way of being minimalistic, the game, it's been made in a grayscale color. Grayscale is not no color, because no color is nothing. Even if the game was black and white, it would be two color, black and white. But what I mean by no color is there's no spectrum, like red, blue, you understand. It's only grayscale, like from black to white or white to black, going through all grades of gray. And it's an achievement because, and something that I liked, because it could have been very easy to fall into the trap of mixing shapes and colors. This game only mixes, or the objects that you need to move around, they are shapes, unrecognizable shapes or amorphous shapes, and recognizable shapes as in letters and numbers. That's all that the game has. But the designer or the programmer of, as they call themselves, the producer of the game, could have fallen very easily into the trap of, oh, let's play around with color, and then would have added another layer of complexity to the puzzles. But they did not, so they kept the degree of difficulty for the puzzles at a minimum, because it's a minimalistic game. So that's something that I appreciated as a design choice for the game, the no use of color other than black, white and grayscale, and following with the idea of being minimalistic and achieving more with the minimal number of elements. That's my positive and my only positive, because other than that I liked the game and it was interesting, but there's nothing special about the puzzles other than they are minimalistic and they, as I said many times, it achieves a lot with very little. Other than that, there's nothing that it's recognizable or I will remember this game because of this. And also, I have one small negative, the small level of negative, because the same, it's not giving you too much, this game. It's a very small game, so there's not like a terrible design decision that it breaks the game. And that is something that I found in the first game. I found it for the first time and it was something that I didn't like, but the second game tries to fix that a little bit, and that's the screen size. The first game doesn't have different resolutions. I wanted to make it full screen or at least bigger than what I was seeing, and there was no way to change the screen size. I know it has to do with the pixel design or pixel sizes for the sprites or the way the game has been made. It cannot adapt to all the resolutions, but at least the most common, they should be there. And the second one has 3 sizes, so that's been accounted for, but still I couldn't make it full screen, and I think that's a mistake. At least 1080. I'm not saying I'm going to play this game in my 4K television in the living room, but at least monitors, for PC monitors, PC screens, at least they are 1080. And this game, it has 3 sizes, but the biggest of the 3, it still wasn't full HD like 1080. I'm not saying it has to be fixed now, but it should have been accounted for from the beginning of development. So I know it's more complex than what I'm saying, but who doesn't play at full screen? And that is all my negative. Now, outside of the negatives, I found an issue, but I won't consider it a negative because I'm not sure what's the story behind. So I cannot say for certain that it's an error, it's a mistake, or something not good. I will not say it, but I'll need to mention it, and that's about the music, and that's my first special mention. I didn't realize while I was playing because I was focused on the game. A day after or 2 days after, I checked on Twitch and I got a copyright infringement or an issue that makes the video be muted. And Twitch, it tells you which song it's recognizing. So I'm playing the game and the music from the game, Twitch recognizes it belongs to someone, so it's muted. And it tells you the song and the owner of the rights. So what I did is check this song, and to my surprise, this song from the first game, it's online available to listen for some meditation something, like you have a very relaxed and calm sound and a person on top of the music is saying some words like self-motivation messages, but the song in the background was the same that the song in the game. So my question, I'm wondering what's going on here. I'm wondering if the music for the first game is made specifically for this game, or is it taken from a library, which wouldn't be nice. It wouldn't be nice. I understand it's an indie video game, but that doesn't explain or justify that you take the music from somewhere and put it into your game, even though you have the rights to use this music. Because whatever you do, it has to be original. I know it has to be modified to a certain degree so that it's considered a new thing, but playing music in your game, you are not modifying anything. The only thing that I found different from the game to the song that I could hear from SoundCloud, which is available, is that the music or sound in the game doesn't have the voice of this person saying or mentioning some self-care, self-improvement sentences. So I'm wondering if the music is not original, it would have been level 2 or even 3 negative. But as I don't know the complete story, I'm not able to say for certain. Now, talking about the music without this issue, without this story and context, I have to say I prefer the music from the first game than the second game, because the music in the background from the first game, it's more like music that it fills up the silence, more like it goes with you. It is part of the game, and same as it happened with Gambit Shifter, it travels with you in a different way, but it's more like ambient music, not ambient like a filler, but it's nice to have in the background. And the second game, it's just a sound. It's like a very ethereal music. I'll say music between quotes because I don't feel it's really music. It's more like sound, more like Cosmic Express, like very ethereal. Doesn't have a rhythm, doesn't have a melody. It's like it lacks the presence of the first one, the music in the first game. And that's my first mention. My second mention, it's about the sound effects. Sound effects, I felt they were better in the second one than in the first one. Because another difference from the first to the second is that the second game, it shows that it's an evolution from the first game, and everything has been improved. Graphically, it looks better, more refined, because the first game visually it's a bit like chunky, and the second one is more smooth. Maybe it has to do with the resolution as well. And along with this idea, the sounds and how you interact with the game, and the second game, it tells you when you are solving a puzzle which part of the tree you are solving. It didn't happen in the first game. Not that it's a deal breaker in this game, but it's something, little details that are nice to have. Like, it's always nice, and that shows that there's been a care for the design and the details, and that's always welcome. Also, along with this idea, as I was saying, comes the sound. The sound seemed more taken care of in the second game than in the first one. When you find a puzzle, there's a sound like, hey, this is a new puzzle, you haven't solved it. So I prefer the sound effects in the second game than in the first one. And that was my first and second mention. First, I like the music of the first one over the second one. Music from the first one reminded me a mix of Samorost with Machinarium, which I said during the stream. Second one is more ethereal, more without entity. And second mention, the sound effects. Second game better than the first one. And that's my final comment. The second game feels more refined. I think that's the word. More refined than the first one. The first game felt like I have an idea, I have a prototype, let's put it into action, put it into motion. And then once the first game was finished, the developer realized of two things, about the process and about the final product or the end result. And it seems like the second game has improved on both of them, which are different. The process is different from the final result. So imagine you do an experiment or something, some do-it-yourself DIY for a project with something handcrafted, and you have a first idea, and this is like this game, and then you start collecting things and tools and all the materials, and then you do it. And once you do it, while you are doing it, that's called the process. You finish, and then you realize that, oh, if I had known from the start that I was going to go through this, process. I would have made this and this other change and would have made the process easier, faster, more simple. And then second, the result, the final product, what you get in the end. Oh, if I had known I was going to get this, I would have added this or that or something, or would have made it different and would have used more time or effort, resources on this part and not the other part. So this is what feels with these two games. The first one's more like the skeleton, or more simple, more the idea, and the second one is the same but refined. It's exactly the same but better sound, music, maybe it's made specifically for the game. The first one was taken from somewhere. Just my opinion, because I don't know. Visually it's more refined, sound effects are more refined as well. So that's the difference of what I felt between the first one and the second one. And the only thing left for me to say is the final score, which I'll do separately. I have one final score for Hair Trees, the first puzzle, and the second one is Hair Trees, the puzzle house. So I'll give scores separate. So my final score for Hair Trees, the first puzzle, first game, is an arrival out of 10. Because this game felt exactly as what the movie is about. You get something that you don't know about, anything absolutely, like zero, and then only by pictures, by images, the game tries to communicate with the player. And at the beginning you don't understand anything, or at least that's what happened to me. I didn't understand anything. That's why I went puzzle after puzzle without solving any of them. And once I started identifying the pattern, that's when I started getting into the game. So not at the beginning, but in my second playthrough of the puzzles, second inspection of the puzzles, then I started, oh, I can connect this with this. I have seen this in another place. Not that the puzzles are connected between them. Each puzzle is unique. You can solve each puzzle only with the information it's giving you. No information outside the puzzle from another place it's required. So the game starts communicating with you, and then you start making these connections, and little by little you are learning. That's what happens in this movie. You are learning by stages, and little by little, and getting some information, and little by little getting into the theme, into this language of objects and moving things around, which is very simple as in the movie. It's not a complex language, which it can be, but it's transmitted or represented in the simplest of ways. That is my score for Hair Trees, the first puzzle, which is the first game, and it's an arrival out of 10 because I felt exactly as the characters in this movie, learning to speak an alien language and managing, maybe in the end, if you can solve the puzzles. That's my score for Hair Trees, the first puzzle. And now my final score for Hair Trees, the puzzle house, which is the second game. It's a learning book, children's book, or learn the letters, learn the numbers, anything that it's for young kids to learn something, it's applicable. In this case, I chose a learning book, which is general. So my final score for Hair Trees, the puzzle house, it's a learning book out of 10. Because this game, it felt the same. It felt like you are learning a new language, but you already have a few tools that you can use. Like in a children's book, you can make distinction by color, you can make distinction by shape, by size. So it's not learning a language from zero, absolutely zero, like it felt in the first game, but you have the very basic tools, but you have something to work with. This second game, we came with a little bit of knowledge, but still we have to learn what the game and every puzzle was asking from us. Like, is this puzzle specifically asking for a sequence of numbers or a combination of letters, or is the sequence found in here or there? You still have to find out and learn in each puzzle, which is probably what kept this game being interesting, that every puzzle was different, either in shape, in mechanics. I'm not able to say in mechanics because the only mechanic is move objects, move things around. but the way you move them, the way you mix them or combine them, it's different in every puzzle. And that's what kept this game interesting. And what in the end would make me recommend the game. That there's a lot of ideas put into something so small. So this is my final score for Hertries The Puzzle House. It's a learning book out of 10. And with this, I can only say I recommend both games. If I had to recommend only one, I would choose the second one because it's more refined and you'll get the same experience than the first one. If you are going to play just one, play the second one. If you are going to play the second one and you like it, you can still play the first one and you will not feel like you are going backwards. It's a little bit rougher on the literal sense because graphically, like the edges of the objects are a little bit more jaggedish, but the experience is equal. And it's also shorter, has less puzzles. And if you are going to play both of them, you already know from the start you are going to play both of them. Start playing with the first one and then play the second one. And you'll see the evolution. So I recommend it. I liked it. The first one maybe takes about 1 hour, maybe less, because I'm a slowpoke. And the second one can take around 1.5, between 1 and 2 hours if you go fast or you take your time, 1-2 hours. This is all from me today. I'll thank you for sharing your time with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.